This is the Circle City News. Listen or watch us on Facebook, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, and other places that play fine podcasts. Or visit our blog at circlecitynews.org.
All right, welcome to Circle City News Podcast. I'm your host, Sophie Hostetler, and today's episode is all about an Indianapolis nonprofit called Unconditionally. Joining us is founder and CEO, Sarah Daniel. Welcome.
Thanks for having me. I'm super psyched to be here.
Woo! Me too. Thanks for joining us. So, what exactly does Unconditionally do for those who are just listening in and have no knowledge of the organization?
Yeah, so Unconditional exists to provide wraparound support and resources to women who have worked in the adult entertainment or sex industries. And so what all that entails is when we say adult entertainment and sex industries, we differentiate there because not everyone who strips and works at strip clubs considers themselves a sex worker. And just like not all sex workers consider themselves an adult entertainer. So to encompass both of it, we just say it all. So we primarily work with women who work in the legal side of sex work. So that would be working in clubs, OnlyFans, that kind of thing. And though anyone who has worked in any type of sex work or adult entertainment can come to us for services, but our area of expertise is definitely more on the legal side of things. It can be a lot harder to get resources when you're in the legal side of the adult entertainment industry because there's a lot more stigma. People have a lot more empathy if someone, is trafficked or is a street worker. But if you're working at a club, people don't always want to hear the rough parts of it, the unjust parts of it. And people like to just make stereotypes about strippers that, oh, you're a stripper, you must be dumb, or you must be overly sexual, or like all these things that are just not true. Smartest women I've ever met in the city are women I've met at the club. Anyway, that's side rant, but what Unconditional really does is we provide outreach. So we go into local clubs and we bring gifts for everybody that's working there. And the reason why we bring a present instead of, say, like a social service resource is because, everyone who's in the club might be in a totally different spot. So to come in and say, oh, do you need help or do you need this is really disrespectful. But we are a faith-motivated organization, so a lot of our motivation for going into the clubs is because of how terrible people of faith have treated sex workers and dancers. So by bringing them a present and going there, it's really doing damage control for things other Christians have done in the name of God. There used to be a guy who would protest outside of one of our clubs and tell women they were whores and going to hell. And that's not Jesus. And so we started bringing presents as just a way of saying like, hey, your job is really hard. Not a lot of people understand it. We know a lot of people judge you for it. And we just want you to know that we think you're awesome and we love you. And I want to be your friend. And that's it. No strings attached. And inside each gift bag is our contact card. And it just says unconditional support for women. So if people need resources or help, they can reach out to us. There's times where the clubs are super, super slow and where, or during COVID when all the clubs shut down, I suddenly had women reaching out to us saying, I don't have any food in my home. I can't work anymore. I don't know what to do. So then that was our first program that we ever did. And then since then we have added on programs that the women we work with have requested. So we started doing a support group. And that is just a safe space that women can come to and vent about work or talk about trauma or things that they're going through and just have fun too. And then we've added more programs throughout the year. But overall, what we just try to do is be there for women on their journeys, whatever that looks like for them, whether that's just being a cheerleader, someone you can call and vent to, or it's, you need help not getting evicted from your apartment. If you are trying to leave the industry, which is very, very difficult to do, we're here to help you with that. If you don't ever want to leave your job, but you want to come to our annual Christmas party. We're here for that too. So yeah, so a little bit of everything. I'm trying not to overtalk.
No, that all sounds so amazing, and um, I really commend you for doing all of that. That it's really refreshing to hear that there's an organization like that here in Indianapolis, considering how, most of Indiana is very conservative, especially, when you were talking about stigma with sex work and the pleasure industry, if you will, the adult entertainment industry. And it just seems very awesome that there's something locally here that people can get involved with. Um, how did you get the idea to start this nonprofit? What really motivated this?
Yeah, that's probably like the number one question I get. And I was just joking earlier with our staff that most of the time I feel like people are low key trying to feel out if I used to be a stripper. And I'm always like, first of all, thank you. Second of all, no. I always take it as a compliment. I'm like, you thought I was a dancer? Thank you.
Right.
Um, so no, like I said, we're a faith motivated organization, and I grew up in a really small town. I was a pastor's kid, all the things, and went to a Christian college, and really just was, frankly, a pretty judgmental, self-righteous person. And I always had a really big heart for like kids who are in difficult circumstances, so kids just who have a lot of obstacles. And so I got really involved in the Boys and Girls Club when I was in college, and a lot of their parents were involved in sex work. And I remember one time, I was seeing the repercussions of some of the things that was happening in their life, and I was just really on my judgmental high horse, like, get your life together. What are you doing? Get it together for this kid. And God just really broke down my heart and saying, like, the women that you're judging are those kids grown up with no support system. So how are you going to sit here and judge them when they're still my children? And that was just really kind of a wake up call for me, of understanding people and their circumstances, and that things are frankly not my business too, of how people are choosing to live their life.
Right.
And then I ended up working at a camp in South Central Los Angeles, summer after my sophomore year of college. And we got to shadow different organizations in the city to learn more about some of the obstacles our kids were facing. And one of the organizations we got to shadow reached out to transgender sex workers in West Hollywood. And they would just walk the same track every Thursday night and just build friendships with people that are there. And then they had a church service in the 7-Eleven parking lot at like 1 a.m. with pizza. And I was just sitting there and I'm like, this is exactly where Jesus would be. Like, people that would never feel safe walking inside a church door because of how we've treated them, not because of their situation, but because of how Christians have treated them. I was just like, this is where Jesus would be, and that's where I want to be. And not waiting for people to, not putting on other people of like, oh, you need to come and figure out your life, whatever, but just going to where people are with unconditional love and with literally no agenda. So a lot of times people will say there's not an agenda, but literally not an agenda besides love and resources. And so that night I talked to a woman for a long time who shared her life story with me. And when you think about like human trafficking or things like that, like if your heart doesn't break for, a kid who's being sold in Cambodia by their parents, like something's wrong with you if that doesn't bother you. But what I really realized here in America is there's such a spectrum of trafficking, and it doesn't always look like someone holding a gun up to your head. And then even if you're not being trafficked, true poverty is not just lack of money, it's lack of support system. So as I was listening to this woman's story, it's like, I'm never going to be in the position where I have to choose between turning a trick or getting evicted. That's not going to be a choice I have to make. I have family, I have resources. I'm never going to have to think, oh, me and my daughter are going to sleep on the street if I don't do this. And if I don't have to break any personal boundaries that I have for the safety of my child. And realizing that is a choice a lot of people have to make, and that is an injustice, and just that the main thing every human being needs is community and support, and a support system, people that are in your corner no matter what. So I came back to Indiana and I really couldn't get that out of my head, and I just started praying for like 2 years with some of my friends, and started doing a lot of research, like, okay, what's happening with sex work in Indy, like what's happening for trafficking, all these things. And that was in 2010. And there was nothing, nobody was talking about trafficking, nobody was really talking about sex work. And so then I was like, oh crap, I guess I gotta start something. So this
So
story
glad you
can be
did.
really long. So and then I ended up moving to Indy and interning at a church. And when I interviewed for my internship, I told my pastor, I was like, he's like, what do you want to do in your internship? I was like, I want to start a ministry for strippers. And he didn't even blink. He was like, sounds good. Which now I'm like, what was wrong with you? I was 21. I was an idiot. Like, who knows? And then shortly after I moved here, I ended up connecting with a woman at my church that I found out was a survivor of the industry. And she really took me under her wing and taught me everything about just cultural competency with this demographic and making sure that I'm not coming in as an idiot white savior, which definitely was. And so she really taught me just how to not be a jerk and how to not be stupid and how the industry works in India. I was clueless. Like when I say I was sheltered, like girl, I literally was like Googling like strip clubs in Indianapolis because I didn't know where to even start. And like Harry and Izzy's popped up. I was like, I went there for prom. I'm really confused. And like it was the best. So anyway, so then we ended up learning from some other organizations in other states who have reached out to women in this work. And so that's when we decided to start giving out gift bags. And so in December of 2012, we launched our first outreach because we thought Christmas time is the least weird time to show up at a strip club with a bunch of Christmas presents. And we called every club ahead of time too, because from the beginning, we always wanted to make it clear that these are businesses, this is someone's profession, and we need to be respectful and make sure that we're welcome. Like I don't ever want to go to a club where they don't want us there. And so I like called all these clubs and I was like, hi, my name is Sarah. I'm from a church and we want to bring presents for everybody that's working. And I'll never forget when the manager had answered, and for just 30 seconds he would say, what? Like, and I was just like, I said, my name is Sarah, and the whole and they were really open to it, sure. And we talked about when the best time to come is, and how many people were working there. And so our first outreach, we went to 10 clubs in 2 days because we didn't know how it was going to go over and where to kind of like focus in on. And we got received better than I ever could imagine. Women just like were super excited and loved the presents. And I actually just realized that one of the women who's in our program now, that's been in our program since 2020, we just put it together that I met her on our very, very first time in the club in 2012. So that was kind of a cool circle moment. Yeah. So then we expanded. We started going on the third Thursday of every month. And then we've been doing that ever since. And then slowly started adding on programs. And then in 2018, I took a leap of faith and quit my full-time job and made this my full-time job. And then we added a case manager in 2020. And then in 2022, we added a volunteer and office manager, and then a program director and a housing director. And we operated out of our church basement for a long time. And now we're in our own building. We actually just expanded our building. We're like busting at seams now. And it was about like 3 years before anybody really hung out with me outside of the club. And now we've served like over 80 different families this year so far outside of the club. And now we go to 5 clubs and reach about 140 people every month through outreach. That's where we're at now.
That's amazing. It's really cool to hear how far you've come in your own story along with that. I know you already brought up how you guys are faith-based, and it was very refreshing hearing you talk about, growing up in a conservative area, growing up conservative Christian, that type of thing, because I resonate with that very heavily. Grew up in northern Indiana where, I grew up with like Amish people. So sex and sex work, yeah, it's a whole different thing. I'll have to do an episode just about that probably.
Yeah, for sure.
But it's very refreshing to hear you that you've kind of, unpacked a lot of that to get to where you are now. And I think it's a great message for other people to hear, especially, in the times we live in now. There's so many people, which everyone's entitled to their own opinion and to believe whatever they believe, of course, disclaimer.
Mhm.
But hearing people who are religious or who have faith-based practices that, again, have unpacked that internalized stigma about the
Mhm.
adult entertainment industry and everything, and how, like you were saying earlier about, oh my goodness, did I lose my thought? How you were saying earlier about being respectful going into these businesses and understanding that this is their profession, and how you're not trying to change anybody, you're just trying to be there to help. And I think that's exactly, like you had said, what Jesus would do. Jesus was great. I don't practice that faith any longer, but I still believe that Jesus would definitely do that. And it's just awesome to
Mhm.
hear.
Thanks.
Tangent off of that, I saw on the FAQ section on your guys' website that you are also supportive of trans women in the industry as well. Would you say that there is a lot of, I guess, stigma or, um, you know, people saying like, oh, maybe you shouldn't help them or anything like that, considering, the politic state right now with how trans people
Right.
are perceived?
I actually haven't really had anyone come up against me on that. We've had to do some education with our fellow clients, like if a trans woman is there, like making, reiterating, no, these are her pronouns, and so that's kind of been more difficult of just like, especially if someone's not necessarily like fully transitioned yet, so it might not be fully like, I don't know, say like female passing um, to the public. And so there's been having to do some education with our clients, but they've never been like anti. It's more of just like, okay, you slipped up, quickly correct yourself, use the right pronoun, that kind of a
Right.
thing. But with like donors and even our churches and stuff, no one's really been against that at all. I will say, I feel like I gotta be careful on this, but I feel like a lot of people talk about wanting to help the trans community. And what I've found is there's actually not a ton of resources. There's a lot of talk because there's been times where I've had clients who are trans and I've been trying to find resources to keep them from getting evicted. I'm like, well, all these people want to help trans people. It's like a very liberal, hot topic. And the people that stopped the eviction were a conservative church. And so it's just like interesting to me that, I think sometimes, and that's just not even just in this particular area. I was thinking about this the other day. It's like people love to talk about social justice issues. People don't typically like actually putting their money and their time where their mouth is, where it could be messy, or, well, what if that person's not the perfect victim or whatever. So that's been kind of interesting to me, because there's been situations where I'm like, oh, there will be a lot of resources for this, and then I really start digging in, and I'm like, no, there's not. There's us, and let me go beg this church for money. Too much
Right.
there.
Awesome. Well, I'm glad to hear that there hasn't been any, backlash necessarily or anything like
At
that.
least
It's
not
just
to my
something.
face.
Right. It's just something I wanted to touch on briefly about
Yeah.
that. I think that's awesome. Um, Moving on a little bit.
Mhm.
What's one thing that you're really proud of the organization for accomplishing so far? Which you can tell me more than one thing if you'd like as well.
Yeah. So one thing I'm really proud of is so we developed a program called the Bridge, and it is a holistic housing program. And so housing is a very big social justice issue in Indianapolis right now. House prices are skyrocketing, rental is skyrocketing. But even before that happened, we're seeing that one of the biggest obstacles is when you're in the adult entertainment industry and then you decide to quit, there is a huge financial drop off because, not even counting like online work. If you're just going to the club, you can make anywhere from $300 to $1,000 a night. It's been a little less than that after COVID, but especially pre-COVID, you can make good money. Or if you load up with a regular, you can call him and be like, I need my rent paid, and he's going to go pay your rent. So then if you are trying to transition out of that, it's almost impossible because you might be locked into a lease that you got when you made stripper money, and now you're in a quote unquote regular job. You're waiting 2 weeks for your first paycheck. You're getting paid $15 an hour at the most. That's a big thing. And then even if you are barely making it, you are one emergency away from ending up right back in there. And, some of the reasons people decide to leave the industry is, sometimes if they're trying to stay sober and they can't do that work sober. And then if they go back to the club, they know that they are at huge risk for relapse, which could be deadly. We've had women who have overdosed and died. It can be a matter of life or death. A lot of times there's mental health, there's safety. People like to think like, oh, well, the clubs are, regulated. They're a legal business. 100% of our clients have said that they have been assaulted at work. And most of them are assaulted every single day. And sometimes they don't even realize that that's what's happening until we start breaking down, like, no, that man crossed a boundary with you, because the clubs are supposed to be no touch clubs. And like him reaching out and putting his hand up you while you're on stage is assault. That's not okay. That's sexual assault, or that's attempted rape, like all these things that make it a very unsafe environment for women in Indianapolis. Or there's been, stalkers that they won't kick out. Or anyway, those are all reasons that contribute to women wanting to leave the industry. So then when you're trying to transition out, it's really hard. So then one of our board members is a survivor of the industry, and she helped develop this program where we would provide 50% of women's rent for 1 year. And then in turn, they get a wellness mentor, a career mentor. They're required to come to some financial classes. They're required to come to some career classes and to support group or another recovery group. And the reason why we do it like that is because, we believe that recovery and reaching your goals, it's a holistic thing. So if we were just helping pay for the rent, that's great. But that's not going to help someone get from just surviving to thriving. So with the mentors, that's to expand their network. Most of the time getting a job, it's about who you know. And so with having a career mentor, someone who is working in the field that you're interested in getting to, they're taking you to networking events. They're helping introduce you to the right people. They're helping coach you on what to do to get into that field, so that you can have those connections. I mean, most of the connections I've had to make Unconditional what it is, it's been through other people and building that network. And so expanding their social network. And then we also offer a yearly retreat with their mentors and mentees where they can get time away from their kids and just really focus on themselves and relax. And then we have different fun family community events too. So like we just got free tickets to an Indians game. We were going to have harvest nights at the Newfields coming up and just things like that. So I'm really proud of that program because there's no other housing assistance program like that in Indianapolis. Most of the time it just focuses on that direct assistance, or there's a ton of red tape, or it's just something that kind of chips away at your dignity, where I feel like we're able to implement some accountability to help you grow. And that's not accountability of like, well, we're giving you money, so you better perform this. It's just how we talk about the bridge to our clients is, this is not a housing assistance program. This is a leadership development program. This is to help you thrive to where you want to be when you're just ready for that next level of, I'm tired of being stuck in the same place. We want you to go all in to be able to get to where you want to be. So we won the Impact 100 Changemaker Award this year, which was $100,000, and that's all for the bridge. We're able to enroll 10 women in that program now. And so that's probably what I'm most proud of is that program, because I think that it's really innovative, and that I think other nonprofits will take note of it eventually and hopefully do similar things where it provides that holistic wraparound support and not just a temporary solution.
I think everything you just said sounds amazing from a standpoint of, like you said, helping people not only survive, but get set up to thrive on their own. And I just commend you for thinking of all of this. And like you said, there's nothing like this going on in Indianapolis right now. So the fact that you're not only one of the first, but probably the only organization to help people like this is really awesome. Wow. You kind of took the breath away from me for a minute. I really,
Perfect.
like I said before, I know I keep saying it, but it's so refreshing to be able to talk with people like this about those things and really know that you guys are making a difference. And congratulations on winning that award. I think that it's well deserved.
Thank you.
Are there any other parts of your organization like Compass or the Club 180 you want to briefly touch on while we have a little bit more
Yeah.
time?
Yeah. So some of our other programs include, so Compass is our case management program. And so the way we do case management is a little bit different. You know, a lot of times you hear case management, you think of someone like being forced to fill out a bunch of paperwork. And we do have a lot of paperwork. But it's more about just helping women reach their individual goals and have resource navigation. So one of the misconceptions I feel like people have about women in the industry is that, oh, they must like mooch off the government, or, you know, like just kind of like they assume that they're poor, which also, if you're in this industry, like most of the time you're making good money. It's when you leave that then you're forced into poverty. So
Mm-hmm.
most of the women that we work with, and I always say most because everybody's story is different. So, you know, even with the stories that I'm sharing, it's important that if you meet someone who's worked in this industry to not have stereotypes and assumptions. Because whenever I find myself like, oh, I have this industry figured out, I meet someone that's from a completely different circumstance. I'm like, okay, never mind. So anyway, but most of the women that I have met in this work have been completely on their own since they were 13 to 17 years old. Typically, starting sex work came out of survival. I know women who were, you know, sleeping on a park bench at 15 from running away from an abusive home, and stripping or survival sex was how they survived. Or they were trafficked since they were 11 years old, and then when they got out, then that's the only trade they really know. So then they're
Right.
just doing it themselves. So anyway, all that to say, everyone has, you know, a different story, but those are some of the main. Oh, I remember what I was going to say. Sorry, I lost my train of thought.
It's okay.
So whenever you've been in the industry since you were so young, you know, you probably started because you needed a lot of money really fast. That's typically the origin story for most people, whether it was medical debt or from, you know, school, or you aged out of foster care, or whatever it might be. You needed a lot of money really fast, and a lot of times you probably grew up not financially secure most of the time. So now you've worked in the industry from your 17 to 30 years old. You never filled out government assistance. You don't know how to apply for food stamps. Like, you didn't need things like that. Like, I'll never forget one of the first times I met up with someone outside of the club. I was broke. I was in social work, okay, and so I pulled up in a rusted out '99 Grand Am. It was a piece of crap. And she pulled up in a Mercedes, dressed to the nines, and I was like, all right, who's helping who? And
Right.
I was just like laughing. But then when you decide to quit, then you need a lot of help figuring out, like, okay, how do I apply for assistance? Or, oh, there's CCDF, which is assistance for childcare, like helping them navigate that whole system. And then also vetting social service providers, because like we've talked about with the bias and everything, that's true in nonprofits too. I mean, I've worked in nonprofits before. Unconditional is my full-time job, and I've heard people make stripper jokes. I've heard people make assumptions, and so we do a lot of training with our partners of, this is how you respond, and this is what this actually means, and these are the real obstacles that women have faced, and this is the circumstances of why someone ended up in this work to begin with. And so we're able to vet those and then send them to other service providers of, like, no, they're good, I promise. And if you have issue with them, you tell me and I'll deal with it. Like, they're not going to treat you bad just because of what you do for a living. So that's a big part of Compass, is that resource navigation, but it's always client led. So like, and there's no like, the bridge is our program with the most, like, quote unquote rules or structure, because, you know, it's a leadership development program. But we never are like, oh, to go to our food pantry, you must accomplish like these 3 goals from your goals plan. Nothing like that. it's client led and client focused. So whatever they want to focus on, whatever they are comfortable with, that's their choice. And then we have a food pantry. We're a diaper bank distributor. We have a clothing pantry, and all those things. We try to make sure it's really high quality. Because again, the women that we work with are not people who are just constantly living in poverty, who are okay with getting crappy things. Which, frankly, no one should be just getting crap and be like, "Well, you're in need, so just be thankful." So we really make sure we have nice clothes, high quality food, fresh, healthy food, all those kind of things. And then we have a program called Mom Squad, which is a short-term mentorship program in home. So women are matched with a mentor for 3 months where they come into their home and help them with a specific project. So that might be, organizing their house, or if they just have a newborn, holding their baby while they can take a nap, whatever it might look like for them. But the whole part of that program was realizing how little family support a lot of our people had. And how many things my mom just taught me. Like, I'm not an organized person. So my mom would come over and boss me around of like, okay, here's how you put this together. Here's how you pack for a move or whatever. So, and then a lot of the times our Mom Squad mentors end up becoming our bridge mentors. It's really cool. And then we have a survivor assistance fund. So women can apply for emergency assistance. So we have a grant right now that provides rent and utility assistance. So we're able to provide that, which is really great, especially for when women are either not trying to go back to the industry or trying to not enter more dangerous situations. So I always say, like, desperation fuels danger. So, you might have a personal boundary of, I only do OnlyFans, or I only dance, I don't do extras. Well, then if your back's up against the wall, suddenly you're having to cross personal boundaries that you never would have, and putting your safety at risk, or your kids' safety at risk. So we're able to help prevent some of those by providing emergency assistance. And we also provide free therapy on site or virtual. And that's through another grant that we have as well. And we have a trauma therapist who pretty much only works with people who've worked in sex work or survivors of trafficking or dancers. And then we have a lot of partnerships. So also with mental health, we have a partnership with equine therapy, where they provide us grants sometimes to take our ladies there. We have partner with biosound therapy. So yeah, and then our support group, Club 180, which no one ever calls it that. They always call it group. I'm like, I don't know why I try and give things a name. We have a different focus every week. So it's every Wednesday from 12:30 to 2:30. Sometimes we do our therapy through one of our partners. Another one of our partners does like a therapist-led kind of like trauma recovery group. We have a domestic violence class once a month there as well. And then on the last Wednesday of every month, we do a birthday party. So whoever's birthday it was that month, we celebrate all the birthdays from that month. There's a lot of September birthdays, so people have been hyping up Virgo season, which I am one. So
Here we go, Sarah.
So we do a birthday party in the last Wednesday of the month. We have cupcakes, make people wear crowns, and just have fun. Because we believe that, recovery and healing, it shouldn't always be heavy. You should be having a good time too. And, because we have lost women over the years, and we have people in really dangerous situations a lot of times, I don't take their survival lightly. There was a client yesterday that got in a situation where she almost died, and I was just hugging her, crying, just like, I'm so glad you're alive. And so that's why we have birthday parties, to celebrate, like, I'm so glad you're alive. And
That's
then we
awesome.
also throw baby showers. We have special events. We do like a Friendsgiving, a Christmas party, Valentine's Day. We do a spa day every year. We do a lot of things.
It all sounds so awesome. And you talking about the support group especially really just like hit home for me. In college, I'm a survivor of sexual assault, and I started doing therapy, and my therapist was like, oh, I have a support group, like, you should come. And being able to really empathize and help support other women when you're going through something like that is just made all the difference in when I was going through all of that. So that's awesome to hear that you guys also do so much fun stuff, because like you said, you got to include everything, all the emotions, and being able to do stuff like that all together is just, I know from personal experience, it's just like the best way, in my opinion, to really make those connections as well.
Yeah.
Um, what would you, I know on the website there was like a lunch and learn back in
Mhm.
July. Is there anything like that coming up that, people listening in, if they want to volunteer or learn more, become a part of the organization, can
Yeah.
do that?
Yeah, so definitely follow our social medias. So our Instagram and our Facebook is at Unconditional Indy, INDY. So you can get regular updates on that. We are about to schedule our next lunch and learn. We do have a big fundraiser in November, so November 16th. We have an annual fundraiser called Stiletto Stories. And that is at the Vision Loftus building this time. Right now, we have early bird tickets are $35, and then October 16th it'll go up to $50. So you want to make sure you get that cheaper price. And like I said, it's November 16th at 7 p.m. And you can find that info on our social media, on our website, and then also you can buy tickets directly at stilettostories2023.eventbrite.com. And that's a great event to really learn more about us. We're going to have a whole section about the day in the life of Unconditional. We'll have speakers who are some volunteers and some current clients. And we're always very careful about who, shares their story. We don't ever want women to feel shame about what they've gone through, but also never want them to feel pressure or feel like exploited during their story. So that's just always my caveat with our fundraiser of everyone who shares, people who feel really passionate about sharing their story and educating other people. So that's a great place to come.
Awesome. And I know from the website as well, like you do take volunteers, is that correct? And if you want to just briefly touch on maybe what some of the volunteer work would look like if some people listening are really wanting to get involved.
Yeah, so we have a spectrum of ways to volunteer. So whether you are like, I really want to commit to something every single month, we have our mentors and our mom squad. If you're like, my schedule is a little wonky, I don't know, then we have people that, like are on our moving team or our meals team. So like we have a lot of people who need to move quickly sometimes out of domestic violence situations. We rely on our volunteers to help make that happen. We have a lot of pregnant people right now. We have 2 people who gave birth on the same day. So we're always doing meal trains so we can, help the new moms. So there's so many different ways. And we do need guys to volunteer because, I hate lifting heavy things. And I am a feminist, except when it comes to lifting heavy objects. And then I am from the 50s and I want the men to do it for me. So we always need men on our moving team, especially. So, and then we always need people to sponsor our gift bags. So, they can work with our program director and sponsor a club 1 month where they provide everything that we put inside and pack it together and make it look cute. So basically if you have a skill, I'll find a use for it.
That sounds awesome. Thank you for putting all of that out there for everyone listening. Talking to you through all of this has been very eye-opening. And again, like I've been saying, very refreshing. And I love the work that you and your organization is doing. So thank you so much for joining us. Is there any last minute little shout outs or promos or anything you want to do?
Follow our socials and keep in the loop. We are hoping to relaunch our podcast called It's Complicated, Conversations about the Sex Industry. So you can go ahead and subscribe to that, even though it hasn't been updated since 2021.
Okay.
Yeah, and really the best way to get involved is to give. We are growing so fast, so we really need monthly donors, whether that's $5 a month or $500 a month. Every single dollar makes a huge impact. And just continue to educate yourself and don't judge. We say less judgment, more love.
I love that. That's awesome to hear. Awesome. Well, thank you again so much for joining us. It's been a pleasure. And for more information for our listeners, if you want to check out Unconditional, go to unconditionallyindy.com, and as well as their social media. Thanks again, Sarah. Have a great rest of your day.
Thanks. See you later. Bye.